Chapter 31, Flagrante. "But today," she said crisply, "I want you to be inspected by—" At that point, the communication segued into her virtual reality mode, and I was floating above 6 female great American lionesses, resting on a brilliant green moss in the shade of some trees. "Inspected by?" I asked, blinking away the vision to look at Miz. "None of us has ever brought a two-legger into our circle of the females," she said. The thought had an aura of concern, perhaps anxiety, around it. "Ah," I said, nodding. I got the "let's run" blast from her, so I wrapped her neck hair around my fist, and we started our ground-covering lope. 23 minutes, and I could see the chartreuse moss on a hillock in the crook of an ox-bow, about a quarter of a mile on. I could see the lions. They were standing up slowly as we crossed the small river between us. One was huge. I untangled my hand, and we walked toward the other lions at a calm pace. I was stunned by the size of the lead lioness, a quarter again as long and tall as Miz. Her eyes were the same penetrating blue. They all were. I had a certainty I was being penetrated. Miz made a 2-cough, 1 quiet roar greeting. "Greetings and humility," she said in my mind. The alpha lioness cocked her head at that and looked more closely at me. Cubby declared her loyalty to me by belly-crawling to her place between my legs. I sensed a huge data flow from Miz to the alpha and more diffusely to the other lions. It was not meant for me, but, I believe, Miz kept me in the flow periphery out of simple courtesy. It was a condensed history of how she came to ally with me. It was confusingly dense until I notched into how she was communicating with her peers. There were narrative strings all interwoven, each starting with me, the two-legger event, me and the tapir, me and the super snake, me and the treehouse, me and the fish, and every damn thing that had happened between us. Every string started with me, good old Daryl Streeter, then fluffed out into how MIZ and Cubby interpreted and acted upon my actions. I sensed seasonings of humor, confusion, appreciation, befuddlement, and an herb drawer of other responses. Gradually, as the narration ran its course, I sensed growing respect amid the considerable distrust I felt from the whole pride. Me fixing Cubby's broken leg ended the blast. Miz had a very good sense of drama, climaxes and all. Then something like love flowed. Miz for me, wrapping around the mystery, the incomprehensible content of my mind that was related to, quote, the future. It was a formal introduction, with endorsement, and humbling. All the lions stood motionless. So did I, not having the slightest urge to test my acceptance with this formidable group that clearly started with a negative attitude toward me. But I did look them squarely in the eyes, one after the other, barely moving my eyes to each target. I let my emotions flow. Respect was right up there on top. I mean, you have to respect something or someone who can decapitate you with a single chomp of a huge mouthful of fangs. Then I concentrated on my admiration of them, and my acceptance that they were mentally my superiors, and that I prized mental capacities. Then my own pride at being an engineer flowed smoothly into an area I did not plan, all about what great allies we would be. I decided to elaborate one aspect of my usefulness. I slowly raised my hands toward the alpha and started moving my fingers. I have hands. You don't. I reprised all the hand memories of pulling on Cubby's leg, then wrapping the splint, fingers expertly weaving the bandage. I pictured sewing the toe of my moccasins, then, time to ramp it up, I shut my eyes for a moment and relived my finest slingshot moment, winding up and releasing my sling, the stone snapping a fang and penetrating the throat of a giant wolf, and its spectacular leaping death throw. Reliving it as fully as I could, I recalled the amazement at the shot's results. Then I opened my eyes and finger-thumb counted 1 to 4 on each hand, then did thumbs up with both hands for the 5s. Then I bowed. All in, I thought again, now a standard thought in my life with the great American lions. Later, My acceptance accomplished, every one of the formidable females having sniffed me rather extensively, if you know what I mean, and with pings of mental acceptance coming from them, even with some hesitation from a couple, we all dived into trying to talk. I told them in visual and oral memories about my job as a consulting electrical engineer for large hydroelectric power stations. I broke my mental butt visualizing working under the rig in Denison Dam, popping back in time, falling on my face in the grass, etc. All the way through this, I thought about the technical stuff of my job. I thought about the calculus, quantum multimeters, superconduction, and the like. I tried to think of something to express the quantity of time I had traversed, but I couldn't come up with anything. Not sure how successful all of that was just then. I could hear and feel a mix of amazement and incredulity coming from the Lionesses. They had curiosity that could not be addressed. "We need to talk, with words," I said to MIZ. MIZ shot each of them a full module of her language extraction from my brain. 7 mighty Lionesses suddenly knew my version of the English language. This did not make them brilliant conversationalists. None of them had even heard communication in abstract symbols called words. MIZ had had days of hearing me think in words before she tackled the challenge. Don't get me wrong, these were feline geniuses. Something like adopting a whole new way of communicating was a parlor game to their giant brains, but it did take a little while, 3.2 hours specifically. Long into the evening and night after my acceptance ceremony, we were talking in words, awkwardly sometimes, but functional. "There is an important cloud coming on the waters clinging to the earth," tried the enormous Alpha. Her mental voice was wreathed in echo and colored in timbres completely different from MIZ. She had no pattern of emphasis whatsoever, completely flat, but every word was correctly pronounced. I asked MIZ, "What the hell's she talking about?" "The mother lion senses something coming," said MIZ, and we could feel the other lions listening and understanding what MIZ said. "She is the most sensitive at hearing, and she hears two-leggers that are different from those we know. They approach over the sea, but we do not see them, for they are behind the curve of the world, where the water clings to the sphere." "That explains it," I said, striving to avoid sarcasm, "but holy cats, these felines have the spherical nature of the planet down pat, over 100,000 years in the past, and they're lions." "It is why we were called to come here. I thought you would see that," said MIZ. Scratching her ears, she put me in my place. "We all hear them now," said one of the other lionesses. "They are like you in a way, and like the other two-leggers, both the thin blacks and the fat whites, but still different." I was truly impressed that all these genius lions were sounding like a problem-solving seminar, only what the hell were they hearing? Super important stuff, apparently. Enough to call in the scattered sisterhood. By the way, was this all of them in the Texas area? 7? That's not a survivable population. I fixed MIZ with my best confident gaze and said aloud, "Can I hear them, please?" All of the lionesses' heads turned to look at me, then at MIZ, then back and forth. I had hit a hot spot, but I wasn't sure what it was. The alpha lioness, her Hugeness, I now thought of her, queried MIZ, Can he hear what we hear?" Of course, this was not rendered in English or words of any kind, but I was getting downright competent at comprehending nonverbal lion talk by now. Hugeness would have been shocked. "If I reroute it to him," answered MIZ. "Okay," said her Hugeness. "Do it."